Hello and welcome to Marketing Solutions for Local Law Firms, the podcast that provides you with all the latest digital marketing tools, tips, and strategies you will need to implement in order to stay ahead of your competition. If you are looking to substantially increase your caseload in the next 6 months, this is the podcast for you. And now, here's the host of our show, the local business guy himself, Frank Deming.
Hello, everyone. This is Frank Deming, the local business guy. Welcome to another episode of Marketing Solutions for Local Law Firms. Happy Wednesday. Happy Hump Day, everyone. I hope you guys are having a rockin' week thus far. Today, I have the privilege of having on the show a dynamo. And when you listen to this person speak about her love and her passion, you're going to see why I refer to her as a dynamo. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to the great Renee McMullen. I'm sorry. I think I screwed that up. How's it going, Renee?
It's going well. McMullen is fine. You got a lot closer than some people do.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, it's interesting. It's everything from Mullins to McMuller to McMillion to McMillan. A lot of different variations.
Iterations of it. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess
probably
you're used
except
to it.
in Ireland. A lot of McMullins in Ireland, but other than that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Renee, I have known you for quite some time, but the audience does not know who you are. So in your own words, can you tell us who are you and what do you do?
Who am I? Well, I'm Renee McMullen. I am president and CEO of MTM Business Consulting, and we service marketing management, events, and business development support firm. And we work with small to mid-sized businesses and nonprofits, helping them put their best foot forward and maximizing their business. And
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just said we know what we do.
I messed up your flow there. I'm sorry.
No worries.
Now define small to mid-size, because that means different. That means something different to a lot of different people. What does small to mid-size companies mean to you?
Well, we run the gamut. Sometimes there are solopreneurs, one woman, one man bands that need the support, and all the way up to they have 50 to 150 employees and they're doing 10 to 20 million, so that whole SBA definition of small business, but don't necessarily have the expertise, the time to really think through their marketing or their events, that aspect of their business that they really want to see grow and develop. And that's where we step in.
Okay. All right. Now I know you do a majority of things, a vast majority of things, but you're expert in when it comes to branding. And as a matter of fact, the topic of this discussion is called Why Branding Matters, the 5 C's of branding. So let's get into that for a little bit. Now, when it comes to branding, in my opinion, like, when you say small to mid-size, I'm assuming that looks a little different depending on the size of the company.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Depending on the size of the company and the industry, I would say as well.
Yeah. Oh, the industry as well.
Yeah. I think because some businesses are some industries you're kind of built to be smaller, but the branding is just as important. In my opinion, if you're in food services versus IT versus construction, those things, may look, a little bit different in terms of the importance of the branding. You're very familiar with local business, and their, and all that it takes to be seen and be viewed in a certain light. And so that's where
100%.
the branding really becomes important. So that might be, the one bakery, on the block, but we want to make sure that folks within, that 5 mile, even 10 mile radius know about that bakery, and in some cases come and seek it out as a destination.
Yeah. No, I got it.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't know if you knew this about me, Renee, But before I interview someone, I do a little research on
Uh-oh.
them, and then that research helps me come up with some good questions
Mhm.
that I think are going to enlighten or help the audience,
Okay.
people, anyone listening. And so, since we're talking about branding, I saw that you have kind of like an approach to branding, and you break it down into like an acronym. It looks like the B.R.A.N.D. So what does that mean to you?
So, yes, I had the opportunity at one point to do a little bit of speaking engagement. And when I did that, I thought about, what does branding mean? And particularly in this case, it was actually for young people, but it's applicable for, for business, for a brand, or what have you. So, to me, that approach to kind of from the mindset perspective of brand, the B stands for belief. So each of those letters in the word brand kind of stand for something. So the B stands for belief, just believing in what it is you putting into the marketplace, be that your service, what you mean, and the like. Just standing behind it and being 10 toes down, as they say, in some urban vernacular. R is for resilience and, stick to it, ness, and continuing to um, try again, if you will. Um, the A stands for aptitude and making sure that we're continuing to be knowledgeable about our brand, about our industry, about client base. The N stands for newness and being amendable and understanding the change. The change is the only constant.
Mm-hmm.
So always being adaptable to those things that are new in your industry with competitors, those kinds of things. A lot of new things happening for small business right now. And then the D stands for decision and being mindful of what one decision and how it can reverberate and affect other things down the line, be it you're in the midst of a launch, you're in the midst of a rebrand, all of those things. So that's kind of our approach, our mindset approach to branding. And we kind of help walk our clients through that along
Oh,
with the
okay.
5 C's. Yep.
And do you have a way of breaking it down? If someone comes to you for like say rebranding, is there a methodology that you have that will touch on all these five elements?
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hello there, listeners. If you're an attorney and you would love to be a guest on the show so you can promote your services to people that listen to the show and beyond, give us a call at 888-416-7752 or send us an email at podcast@lbmsllc.com. One of my associates in the podcasting team will send you an email and connect with you, schedule some time, send you the podcast intake form, and schedule you to be interviewed on the show. So if that's something that you really would want to do, go ahead and take one of those actions, and we'll take it from there. So until then, enjoy the rest of the show.
Yeah, we also have, in addition to kind of walking them through and helping them understand, what they believe about their brand and making sure they've become resilient and their skills and all of those things. We have the 5 C's of branding. Each one starts with a C. Making sure that, again, starting with change, helping them to plan for contingencies, helping them to understand about their clients' needs, understanding their business. Um, I believe that one of the advantages of a small business is that we, because I'm a small business too, tend to be more adaptable to
Mm, mm,
change. It's harder to turn a big ship than it is a little speedboat, right?
mm-hmm.
So that's one thing that we we sit down and really map out where they are in the business and where they're looking to go, and then walk them through what all of these different aspects of their brand, making sure they're prepared for it. Another is consistency. Particularly in smaller businesses, they tend to be focused on getting that product or service out, and doing the work. And so the different elements of their marketing house, if you will, may look a little different. The logo on their social media platforms may not match what's on the website, may not match
Mm,
what's on their brochure. And I'm sure you've come across that before.
yeah.
So can customers pick you up out of a lineup every time? Is your brand consistent? I always use the McDonald's analogy. Any McDonald's you go to, that's McDonald's. And small businesses need to adapt that same concept and that same way
Mm,
of being. And also being consistent in the experience that the prospects and clients get. If you're going to Nordstrom
mhm,
or you're going to Target, you pretty much know what to expect every time you go.
mhm,
Nothing wrong with either one, but they have consistency in their brand. Same with if you do food, Chick-fil-A versus, McDonald's kind of thing.
mhm, mhm,
And then another C is clarity, and keeping things so that your audience, understands what it is that you are wanting to convey to them. Um, I have a really quick thing: succinct messages connect. Keeping things as crisp as possible, thinking about the perspective of the person to whom you're communicating. I use the phrase empathy is your friend, putting
mm,
ourselves in our clients' shoes, our prospect shoes, and moving forward accordingly in that way. The fourth C is communication. Um, say unto others what you would have them say unto you, to
mm.
modify that famous phrase there, and being mindful of your message. It's very important in the branding process. And aligning and developing personas, different people who will be engaging with your brand, with your product or your service. And again, empathy is your friend. And being able to communicate and put yourselves in the mindset of that particular client type or person. And the
Mhm.
final C is connection. I think in teaching small businesses some about marketing versus branding, they're a marriage. Branding kind of helps with the connection on a quote emotional level. So being intentional as a brand, considering the destination, relating to that particular persona that you're reaching out to, and making sure the connections are intentional and proper with your clients and your prospects. So those are the 5 C's.
Well, that's awesome. One of the things that I saw also as you were going through this, the 5 C's,
Mhm.
I saw that you have this whole partnership thing between marketing and branding, and I like the way you phrased it because it's a partnership, and it truly is. I definitely see the connection between marketing and branding, of course, but I like
Mhm.
the way that you put it as a partnership. I think that's important, and I think it's true. So let's shift gears a little bit now.
Mhm.
What's tell me about your company, MTM Business Consulting. What's basically, first of all, what does the MTM stand for? Second of all, like tell me a little bit about the company. How was it birthed? And all that kind of good stuff.
Okay, cool. So it's interesting. Speaking of branding, I started the company back in early 2000s under a different name,
Oh,
Moments That
really?
Matter. Actually, the company was named Moments That Matter.
Mm.
And shout out to my original company name. And
Mhm.
with the lead being more event management focused, and helping individuals and companies with their events, doing marketing consulting as well. And I did a rebrand, wanting to be more corporate, if you will, and really support the small business community, and then evolve further into where we are now with MTM Business Consulting. So MTM does not stand for Moments That Matter, though. It has a little bit different flavor depending on which one of our business lines you're talking about. So it's maximize the meeting if you're talking about our event management services. So we help with strategic event management, and that looks like hosting, participating, sponsoring, or speaking. And that's where we work with our clients to effectively leverage events in their overall marketing mix.
Nice.
MTM stands for Maximize the Moment when we're talking about marketing consulting. And that looks like, all of our marketing consulting bag of tricks, if you will, from marketing planning to strategy, to all the digital marketing things that we know about, that you've talked with your audience about a number of times, and we support that as well. The final MTM is Maximize the Marketplace. And that is where we support business development efforts of our clients. We also have a proprietary business development planning process that we call the growth planning paradigm. And in that process, we walk companies through, organizations through a 6-step process that allows them to plan for their growth. Another thing we tend to do as small businesses is we're on the grind, and we're in the midst of serving our customers and moving and profiting, but maybe not necessarily planning, even in the short time, to grow. So that's the process that we have. So it's maximize the moment, the meeting, and the marketplace. So that's what the MTM stands for.
Interesting. And you touched on something that I also wanted to talk about, your whole growth planning paradigm there. Can you expand? I know you touched on it a little bit. Can you expand on it?
Sure. So the growth planning paradigm, as mentioned, it's a 6-step process. And if you think about frameworks like SWOT analysis, or some may be familiar with SOAR, which is Strengths, Opportunities, Aspirations, and Results, which is another kind of OD platform to kind of look at a team or an organization. Our framework is similar to that, but at the end, you come away with a plan to develop your business. So each letter, as you're getting to know me, Frank, I'm an acrostic
I kind of see
acronym
that.
kind of girl.
I'm kind of seeing that.
Yes. So of course, each letter in the word growth stands for a certain step in the process. We start off with kind of a general overview of the business, or if we're in a medium to larger business or organizations, we may be just looking at a particular business unit. But where is that particular entity at this time? What services are being provided? How many people are on staff? How many clients are being served? Those kinds of things. And then the R is to take a look at the past year or planning horizon. Some organizations kind of work in 12-month blocks. Some organizations work in 18 months, like a year and a half. So we take a look at that past, time, and what were the revenues, how many people, clients were served. If we had projections, were those projections met? Why or why not? Kind of a little bit of a debrief on that previous year or so. The O is opportunities. That's actually common in all 3 frameworks that we've talked about thus far, but opportunities for growth and being able to look at where the company wants to go in terms of specific investments in growth. Where can gains in revenue or geography or influence be obtained if the organization was to pursue those particular initiatives. And then once the opportunities are identified or kind of crystallized, then we talk about where do we go from here, and that's the W. And that includes developing goals for that upcoming horizon, for that year, for that 18 months. And in a case where you have a little bit more of a hierarchy, you might take those business units and make sure that their goals align with the overall organization goals. If you're in a sales team, make sure that the West region's goals align with the East and the Midwest, all together. And then once we kind of have those goals, then we tie those to a tactical execution plan and we time those out. And so if, the goal is, an increase in staffing of 15%, what does that look like over the 3 or 4 quarters to get from the beginning of the plan to the end of the plan? And so we tie those together and outline a schedule quarterly, not on May 18th, next year it's going to be this, but in Q1, Q2, Q4 kind of alignment. And then when we've mapped out the tactile execution, then we talk about how do we measure success? What doesn't get measured doesn't get measured doesn't get managed, I think is the phrase.
Mm-hmm.
And so we look at what the metrics look like so that when we get to the end of the plan, or as we're going through the plan, what determines our success? And that's not always we meet the number, we got the revenue. That might not be it. We may have to establish a particular process internally as a company in order to prepare us for those increase in clients, or we want to expand geographically, so we need to prepare to move into that new geographic space. And so that's the H. And so that's the whole growth planning paradigm. So we take the organization, the company, usually about a 5-week process, get the stakeholders in the room. And in some cases, they haven't ever really talked through, well, this is my thought on where we should go, and this is my thought on where we should go. Mm-hmm. And based on where they sit in the organization, in some cases, those perspectives are going to be different. So we kind of help facilitate those conversations through the process. And we come out of it with a plan.
That's awesome. I can actually see why you say is a partnership between the branding and the marketing, because the growth plan is kind of like a marketing plan. Mm-hmm. And you're tying that with, the acronym brand and the acronym growth. I mean, I could totally see the whole thing coming in synergistically there. That's pretty awesome. And do you have a team? Do you work alone like that? How does that whole thing work?
I believe that together everyone achieves more. So I definitely pull in teammates. I am in my core, the business, I developed a business. I'm essentially a one-woman band, but I definitely pull in my teammates. I have my little dogs, if you will, that come on board and definitely help me. Other consultants. There have been a couple of consultants that were with me, particularly for the growth planning paradigm, the development, the call that I made when it kind of came to me and helped with developing it. So yes, definitely have a team of consultants in each realm of services that we provide, awesome event managers, wonderful communications professionals, and consultants that help with the business development planning side.
Okay. Sure. Mm-hmm. So if a business were to come to you and say, "Hey, Renee, I'm listening to this podcast, this great podcast run by Frank Deming, and I need help."
Awesome podcast.
Anyway, and I need help with branding. Mm-hmm. Let's say they have a brand, they've been in business X amount of years, they're small business, let's say 2 million in revenue or whatever. Like, what's your? I guess my question is, like, what's your starting process? Like, how do you start to engage with them? Is it a lot of questions at first? Is it understanding their path to success, etc.? Like, what does that look like?
I do tend to do that. I am working with someone now who has been an expert in their profession for over 30 years.
Wow.
and they are looking at, and they have several pieces within the industry, and they want to pull them all together, kind of under one umbrella. And so we start talking about kind of where they are now, each piece of her brand, talking about, what they, who they serve, what, kind of the almost the reporter journalistic piece. So yes, a lot of questions. What's your company about? Who do you serve? Who's your ideal customer? We do have a couple of tools that we use in that regard, to map out their brand, particularly who they serve, what they look like, kind of mapping out personas. We kind of get into the persona thing really quickly, because if you don't know who you're talking to, how do you know what to say? And how do you know how you want to show up? I always use the analogy with branding, particularly, you'll relate to this, you're a suit.
Mm.
If you're a suit, are you a J.C. Penney Worthington? Are you a Jase Bank? Are you an Armani?
Mm.
Nothing wrong with any of those, but based on which one you are and who you're talking to, you show up differently in the marketplace, and what you say is different. You don't see commercials to make an appointment with a tailor to get your Armani suit during the evening news. You don't get a catalog in the mail.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if you're, a J.C. Penney Worthington suit, you really don't see a lot of commercials for those either. Or you're not gonna, walk into a Mercedes-Benz dealership and see that in any of those magazines. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't fit.
Yeah.
And so that's usually the analogy I attempt to give. And even women get that, because even though we don't necessarily wear suits, we get the distinction between something that's in JCPenney versus Macy's versus a custom tailor that you're going to make an appointment
Right.
to see.
I like
So
the
we kind
analogy.
of have, so we kind of have, feel free to steal it whenever you like. So we tend to
That's
have those
funny.
kind of conversations in terms of where they are now and where they want to be, where they've been successful, with reaching their audiences, and how they've done so. A lot of small business, sometimes mine included, you tend to be, word of mouth, and it kind of happened organically, and you maybe weren't intentional about what you were saying. So then when you come to somebody who wants to put, kind of a structure around your brand, it takes a little bit more thinking. So some questions, some questionnaires, and some worksheets. We have a vision summary document that we use, to kind of get the business owner to think about, what are the core values of your business? What's the vision? What are your brand promises? If somebody, interacts with your brand or as a customer, in your mind, what are you promising? What are the things that you want to assure your client base? Even down to a big BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal. What's your pie in the sky goal for your company, for your brand in the next 5 years?
What did you call it?
BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal.
I don't think I heard that one.
Yeah. There's an organization, I can't call their name right away, that came up with this instrument, this form, and one of my fellow consultants turned us on to it, and we've been using it ever since. So we kind of take those different tools and really help the business owner do a little thought work, and maybe, again, in some ways they hadn't in the past, on who they serve, and
Yeah.
and who they want to serve moving forward. So that's where we start. And sometimes it might be a little like, wait, when are we going to start designing logo? Well, no, we have to think about, who we are and who we're talking to. There's psychology around colors, as you know. And so you can't just be like, oh, okay, I'm going to do a yellow and orange logo, and that's it because I like it. But depending on your industry, that's not going to be the best color to attract the people that you want to attract for the services you provide. An attorney with a caricature kind of logo, and they're doing, serious, legal things that might not necessarily be congruent. So that's why we kind of have
I think it
those
depends on the reason I'm saying it depends
it
is
does
because it depends on what people are trying to attract.
Absolutely.
I have an attorney who's a personal injury attorney
Mm,
who's pretty gregarious,
yeah.
and he does some wild stuff on TikTok.
hmm
Like, willfully falls and all this kind of stuff. You guys stomp people doing all kind of things. No one else in his industry is doing that. But he's attracting attention, and he's getting cases. And the people who he gets cases from, you can tell that they're coming from a TikTok audience versus, some of my other clients who don't do that. They get different types of clientele. So I guess it all depends,
Yeah. I think so. I think if he used that same approach and he was doing estate planning,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? It
He
might
can't
be,
do it.
he wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah, because that's more of a serious thing. But yeah, good point. Good point.
Yeah.
I'm curious about something. I know you're a very busy woman, and I don't want to keep you too long. But how does someone get a hold of you? Let's say, because I think you gave a lot of nuggets right now. Especially with the 5 C's as well, but especially with the growth planning. If someone says, "Hey, I want to get in touch with Renee. I need some growth planning." How does someone get in touch with her?
We have a website specifically devoted to growth planning. That's kind of my baby. I'm looking to really push that out to continue on with the analogy, not even intentionally doing that, to the marketplace and really help and really work with some small and mid-sized businesses on that. So
Nice.
We have a website. The URL is mtmbizgrowth.com.
Okay.
And that's where we kind of give a little bit of an overview, not all the steps in detail, but just kind of you start here, you end there kind of thing. And we do a complimentary, initially growth planning kind of assessment consultation to just kind of hear what the business is going through and how we might engage and help them with developing the plan. And so that's where they could find us.
Okay. Well, that's good. I will definitely put a link to that, folks, onto the show notes. That way, if anyone is interested in getting together with Renee, helping and having her and her wonderful team help you with your growth plan or maybe even your branding, I definitely will have that link onto the show notes. And this has been really, 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 really enlightening to me. I mean, of course, I've known you for quite some time, but there's some things here that I learned about you that I didn't know. So I'm a little hurt by that, you're revealing it in front of my audience, but that's okay. Obviously, I'm joking.
Not intentional at all.
But anyway, before I let you go, is there anything that I did not ask you that you think will benefit the audience?
No, we covered so much of it. I think that just continue to be intentional and continue to think about how you're communicating to your audience. I am a big proponent of that. And just being clear, being consistent, and communicating, I think goes such a long way. For us as small businesses, for sure.
Awesome sauce. And we definitely have to get together at some point in 2025, Renee. I mean, we've been talking about that for quite some time. We don't live that far together from one another, so we should make it happen sooner rather than later. Hopefully before this actual episode drops. So
Sounds good. Sounds good.
I am going to put an end to this episode. This has been a very, very enlightening episode for me, and I'm sure it was for everyone else listening in. So until next time, this has been Frank Deming, the local business guy, and you've just been blessed by the great Renee McMullen. Take care, folks. Until next week.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Marketing Solutions for Local Law Firms, the podcast that provides you with all the latest digital marketing tools, tips, and strategies you will need to implement in order to stay ahead of your competition. If you would like to know more about the topic we discussed in the show today, reach out to Frank and his team at 888-416-7752 and schedule a discovery call with one of the marketing consultants. If you'd like to be a guest on our show, send an email to podcast@lbmsllc.com and we will put you on the schedule. With that being said, until next week, make it a successful digital marketing day. Peace out.